In this video, I'm going to beat Pokemon Yellow with only a Mr. Mime. I won't be able to use any items in battle, any glitches, exploits, or RNG manipulation, and I also won't be able to use the TM for Double Team until my Mr. Mime is level 100. If you want a more comprehensive list of the rules, check out the video description. So Mr. Mime, let's check out its stats. It has 40 HP, 45 attack, 65 defense, 100 special, and 90 speed, giving it a 17.5% chance to crit. Now this Pokemon is a bit of an oddball, like I really dislike its aesthetics. And it's also an oddball because it's a psychic type that has decent defense, like its defense stat is not its lowest stat. Plus, it starts the game with Confusion, and in addition to this, it gets Barrier, which is perfect for setting up its defenses so it doesn't take a lot of damage from strong physical attackers. Through level up, it learns Light Screen, Double Slap, Meditate, which is another strange move, and it is the only Pokemon in all of Generation 1 to learn Substitute through level up. Through TM and HM, it gets access to Mega Punch, Mega Kick, Toxic, Body Slam, Takedown, Double Edge, so all the standard moves. It also gets Hyper Beam, Submission, Seismic Toss, Solar Beam, Thunderbolt, Thunder, Psychic, Rest, Thunder Wave, and Psy Wave. So like most other Psychic types, this move pool is not particularly expansive. Solar Beam is a nice addition, but without weather effects in Generation 1, it's not going to be that useful. But unlike other Psychic types like Hypno or Alakazam, Mr. Mime seems like it could be played a few different ways. For instance, Barrier could be used as a badge boosting move to shore up its defenses, or you could go for a physical Mr. Mime using Meditate. After all, this move does trigger the badge boost glitch, so while it raises your attack, it'll also raise your other stats if you have the badges that boost those stats. This move could be very useful in combination with, say, Body Slam. I can also see Mr. Mime being played completely without setup. For instance, Psychic, Thunderbolt, Body Slam, and Seismic Toss. So in all my videos, I do 2 playthroughs, so let's see how my first playthrough unfolds with this creepy Mime Pokemon. By the way, I nicknamed it Clown specifically because I filmed this playthrough during Halloween month, and I was like, yeah, clowns are scary, and Mr. Mime is the closest thing we have to a clown in Pokemon. So I've made it to Brock's gym, and I fought no additional trainers in Viridian Forest. I figured I could do this because Mr. Mime starts with Confusion, and it has a really good special stat. After all, Brock's Pokemon are known for being walls, but not special walls. So let's do this. Brock sends in Geodude first. I obviously go for Confusion, and it doesn't do half. Okay, Geodude hits for 6 damage, which is a lot. As a result, it's going to hit me with another tackle because in Yellow version, this thing doesn't know Defense Curl, so it takes Mr. Mime to half health before Onix comes out. Luckily for me, the Onix's tackle is doing much less, and I take it out over 3 turns. I have to say, I was expecting a much more dominant performance there from Mr. Mime. After the gym battle, I headed onto Route 3 without healing. After all, I have enough Confusion PP that I should be able to make it through all of the Pokemon here. By the time I defeat the final bug catcher, Mr. Mime only has 4 PP left in Confusion, so outside of Mount Moon, I make my first stop to heal. Now if you didn't know, in Generation 1, the Psychic type is quite broken because Ghost type moves don't affect it. Because of this, I think that Mr. Mime is going to do very well, so I don't want to waste too much time on additional trainers. However, I did almost forget to pick up Mega Punch. I figure I should have a good physical move that's a normal type, just in case I'm not going to hit something with Confusion. When I'm down here, I decided to face the Rocket, because if I defeat him, I can pick up the Ether that is hidden on this rock. That way, if Mr. Mime is running low on Confusion PP at any point in the playthrough, I can just use it to prevent a trip back to the Pokemon Center. The Super Nerd at the end of Mount Moon is very easy. I one-shot the Grimer because Confusion's super effective, 2-hit the Voltorb, and then one-shot the Coughing. That gives me access to the Dome Fossil, which is definitely the correct choice. And then I defeat Jesse and James, who are really easy. So I'm arriving in Cerulean City before 8 minutes, which is a really good time for Mr. Mime. I have to make a choice here if I want to face Misty now or the rival on Nugget Bridge. Because I'm only level 16 and Confusion isn't going to be very good against Misty's Starmie. Also, Mega Punch will not be very good against Misty's Starmie either because she has X Defend and the Starmie has Harden. I think that the rival is going to be the best choice. He leads with Spearow. Just because this fight is fairly long, I decide to set up Barrier once before using Confusion. It does more than half to the Spearow and then I knock it out on the next turn. Okay, time for the Sandshrew. Please, Confusion, get the 1 hit. It doesn't. Sandshrew goes for Scratch. Okay, that's perfect. No Sand Attack today, and then I knock it out. Rattata's next. I was fairly sure that Confusion was gonna one-hit here, but it doesn't. Rattata gets a critical hit and does a lot to Mr. Mime. However, the following Eevee isn't something to be worried about, so I knock it out, and with that, I'm able to defeat the rest of the trainers on Nugget Bridge, which provides Mr. Mime with a lot of experience. Just before I face the Rocket, before I get access to Charmander, I do have to use the Ether that I picked up in Mount Moon, so I'm really glad that I did that now. That allows Mr. Mime to defeat the Hiker and pick up the Elixir, which will further extend my PP should I need it. And I think I might, because I choose to face this Hiker today, and while he does slow my progress down a little bit because he has 4 Pokemon, I can also then choose to face this Junior Trainer male, moving him out of position and allowing me to pick up the TM for Seismic Toss. So the reason I want this move is because Mr. Mime's attack stat is so low, using a physical move like Mega Punch or Body Slam isn't going to be that consistent. However, dealing fixed damage equal to my level is just going to be better in a lot of circumstances. I save Bill from his freaky experiment, and then I head back to Cerulean City, where I defeat the Junior Trainer in Misty's gym, and then I teach Mr. Mime 2 TMs that I just picked up, Thunder Wave and Seismic Toss. Okay, let's try Misty now. She leads with Staryu. I debated using Barrier or Thunder Wave here. After all, Barrier will help against her tackles, and Thunder Wave could make the Staryu hit less times. However, I decided to go with Seismic Toss, and it knocks the Starfish out over 2 turns. Starmie's next, and here Thunder Wave is pivotal, because Mr. Mime only has 54 speed, meaning the Starmie is always going to move first. It does so, hitting with a big Bubble Beam, taking Mr. Mime under half, and then Thunder Wave paralyzes. Now the Starmie has 59 hit points, so the fact that I'm level 22 means that I have a guaranteed 3-hit with Seismic Toss. The problem is, the Starmie hits with a Water Gun, taking Mr. Mime to 14 hit points, and then it hits with another Water Gun, but luckily I survive on 4 hit points and knock Misty's ace out. Mr. Mime levels up and it gets the chance to learn Light Screen. I considered teaching this over Barrier, but in the end I think Barrier is just going to be a little bit more useful. After all, the special stat is a combined stat in Generation 1. So I say no to Light Screen, and hopefully this will not have implications for later in the run. Now the rocket outside of Cerulean City is another reason why Seismic Toss is so useful. After all, this guy has a Drowsy, and using Confusion against it is just not a good idea. So I knock it out with Seismic Toss. Oh, great, it gets disabled. Well, it was so close to going down anyways, it doesn't matter. Next is the Junior Trainer with 3 Pidgeys. People have suggested that I call her Sandy. I'm also curious what her name is in Fire Red and Leaf Green. Like, maybe she already has a name. It would be cool if the developers made her name Sandy. Today, Confusion's able to one-hit all of her birds, and with that, I made it to the SSN. Because this is my first playthrough with Mr. Mime, I make sure to pick up Rest, and then I pick up the TM for Body Slam. The final optional item that I decide to pick up is the Rare Candy, and then I go up against the rival. Confusion one-hits the Spearow, it one-hits the Rattata, it one-hits the Sandshrew, and then I 3-hit the Eevee with Seismic Toss. With that out of the way, it's time to face Surge. Now I have to mention something here. In Generation 1, moves that have the same type as the target cannot inflict a secondary status condition. However, in this case, using Thunder Wave on Raichu allows me to paralyze it because paralysis is Thunder Wave's primary effect. Also, I was really lucky there because the Raichu missed a Mega Kick. I do have to say I'm a little bit frustrated that I had to use Thunder Wave here because the Raichu has 65 speed and I only have 64 speed. Next, I'll note another interesting interaction, which is when Surge uses an X speed. What this does is it restores Raichu's speed to its original value and then adds the modifier on top of this, so that completely nullifies the speed cut from paralysis. As a result, Raichu moves first, but it's paralyzed. Seismic Toss hits, taking it to orange. And then Raichu goes for a Thunderbolt, which actually does a lot to Mr. Mime. Luckily, my special is great, so I get another Seismic Toss in and I'm able to win. Now here, I'm going to make a confession. I played this playthrough on stream, and you can actually check out the live VOD for that if you're interested. And I was probably looking at chat when this guy says to me, make more space for that. And yeah, I just leave, go pick up the Squirtle, dig back to Cerulean City, be a little bit indecisive because I thought I should heal, but I'm like, nah, I don't need to heal. Then I go to the bike shop and he's like, yeah, it's $1 million, bro. And I'm like, oh, come on. So yeah, I'm going to have to backtrack and grab the bike later on. Now, the next tricky trainer in my way is the trainer that I call the Wrapping Lass. She's this Junior Trainer. She shouldn't be a problem today, though, because Confusion just, one-hits all of her Pokemon. Are you kidding me? It got a Gen 1 miss against her second Oddish? That allows the Oddish to use Stun Spore, which means the following Bellsprout can now trap me and wrap endlessly. However, its second wrap just misses and I knock it out with Confusion. Okay, so crisis narrowly averted. At the end of the tunnel, I faced the self-destructing hiker and I was like pretty confident about this fight. After all, Confusion just one-shots both of the Geodudes, but the Graveler survives. Luckily, it does not go for self-destruct, it just goes for a rock throw, Mr. Mime shrugs it off, and I knock it out on the next turn. So I've made it to the Celadon portion of the game, and here I decide to skip the hideout. I don't think I'll need the extra items with Mr. Mime, and I head directly to the department store. I go to the top floor and pick up the extra TMs here, and after selling all of those, I have enough money to buy 3 vitamins for Mr. Mime. Because it has pretty good speed and its physical stats are just like not even worth trying to improve, I think that obviously calcium makes the most sense today. I catch myself a flyer because I didn't catch one in Viridian Forest, I teach it fly, and then I head to Saffron City because here I can pick up the TM for Psychic. And here I want to mention that you will have noticed I taught Thunderbolt over Thunderwave in Rock Tunnel. At this point in the playthrough, I had really realized that Mr. Mime's moveset wasn't going to become too constrained. After all, I don't think that investing in a strategy like Meditate is really going to be effective. I backtrack to Cerulean City, pick up the bike, and then I head to Pokemon Tower. First, I have to face the rival here. Thunderbolt's perfect because it one-shots the Fearow. Psychic takes the Magnemite out. I reorder my moves so Psychic's at the bottom, and then I use Thunderbolt to knock the Shelder out. Psychic crits the Sandshrew, and all that's left is the Eevee. And Thunderbolt gets the 2 hits, so that was a really easy fight. And from here, the fights continue to be easy, because Psychic is incredible in the mid-game in Generation 1. And that's because so many of the trainers have Pokemon that are either Poison types or Fighting types. For example, all the Chandler's Ghastly in Pokemon Tower, all of the trainers on Cycling Road, and all of the trainers at Erica's gym as well. Here I decide to go through the right-hand tree so that I can face these 2 trainers. That gives Mr. Mime 5 more Pokemon worth of experience, leveling it up to level 33 before I face Erica. This is important because this is just over a damage rounding threshold, and it'll give Mr. Mime just a little bit more kick against the Grass-type Master. Erica leads with Tangela. I go for Psychic, it does just over half, the Vine Monster hits me with Vine Whip fitting, and then I knock it out on the next turn. Okay, time for Weepinbell. Psychic gets the 1 hit, and it's probably also going to 1-hit the Gloom, and in this case, it does. So that's an easy 4th badge for Mr. Mime. And now I'm really excited because usually the 5th badge in Pokemon Yellow is incredibly challenging to obtain because Koga is notorious for being one of the most challenging gym leaders. However, today for Mr. Mime, he is not going to be. After all, he has a bunch of poison types. Of course, except Venomoth. Yeah, Venomoth, of course, is a Psychic flying type. The thing about Koga's gym is that the jugglers have Psychic types, and I need a way to get through them quickly. I wasn't sure what the right choice was here, either using Seismic Toss or Body Slam, but in this case, I decided to go for Body Slam. After all, it does have a 30% chance to paralyze. I get through the first Psychic without any issues, and you'll notice here that I'm going into the battle against the second one already poisoned. The reason for that is because if I'm poisoned now, when I fight Koga, I can continue to be poisoned, and then the Venonats won't be able to put me to sleep. But this is a bit of a miscalculation because Hypno actually has decent bulk, and then it crits Mr. Mime with Headbutt. Okay, so now I only have red health left. I'm not able to do enough damage, and in combination with Poison, Mr. Mime faints for the first time in the playthrough. In the next battle against the Juggler, I do manage to get a bit luckier, and as a result, I get through to Koga, maintaining the Poison status condition. And now, let's take on the Poison-type gym leader. Koga leads with a level 44 Venonat. I use Psychic, and it takes it out in 1 turn. Okay, that's good. Hopefully I can one-hit the following 2 Venonats. The second one goes down, and so does the third one. Okay, so far so good. So the Venomoth has good AI, which means it's always going to prioritize using Leech Life against me, which actually does a lot of damage. It might heal out of KO range. Well, not in this case, because I get a critical hit and one-hit it as well. Okay, so Mr. Mime has earned itself the 5th badge, and with this one comes a boost to my speed stat, which pushes Mr. Mime's speed all the way up to 100. I have another routing choice to make now. Do I go to Cinnabar Island, do the mansion, and potentially face Blaine? Or do I go to Sylph, fight the rival Jesse and James and Giovanni, and potentially even try to defeat Sabrina after that? I decided to go for Sylph, and that's mainly because Blaine is quite challenging in Pokemon Yellow. His Pokemon have powerful Fire-type moves, as well as powerful Normal-type moves, and Mr. Mime is not going to stack up particularly well against them, especially right now when its speed is low enough that it won't be moving first. So, can I beat the rival here? Let's find out. He leads with Sandslash. My only good option against it is Psychic, and it gets a one-hit because of a crit. Okay, that's good. I knock the Cloyster out with Thunderbolt and move on to the Magneton. My Psychic does half, it strikes back with a big Thunder Shock. Unfortunately, my second Psychic doesn't knock it out, and it takes me all the way down to 35 hit points before Kadabra comes out. It makes most sense to use Body Slam against this thing. It doesn't get the one hit, and as a result, it hits me with a Psybeam, taking Mr. Mime down to 21 hit points before I knock it out. Okay, time for the Flareon. My Psychic does less than half, it misses a Fire Spin, and then my next Psychic gets a crit. Okay, so it looks like I made it through that rival fight with luck. Jesse, James, and Giovanni are obviously very easy. The only decision I really have to make here is if I should let Mr. Mime learn Meditate, and today I decide not to. After all, I think Barrier is going to be boosting a more useful primary stat, and while it can only trigger the badge boost 3 times, hopefully I won't need that, and I can rely on the fact that Mr. Mime is a broken Psychic type. So I don't think Mr. Mime is ready to face Blaine yet, so I head over to Sabrina's gym and face her first. She leads with Abra, and with 112 speed, I'm gonna move first. Unfortunately, Body Slam doesn't get the KO and Abra lands a Flash, causing me to miss my next Body Slam, but luckily Abra also misses because Flash has trash accuracy and then I knock it out. Kadabra's next, and at this thing I'm really starting to wonder if I should have taught Meditate, like boosting my attack might have been good here. I knock Kadabra out and Alakazam is next. Unfortunately, Sabrina uses an X defend before I hit with Body Slam, but I get a lucky critical hit. Alakazam goes for Reflect, and my next Body Slam does pathetic damage. But once again, there's a silver lining here because I get Paralysis. Okay, that's good. So it's just going to make more sense to use Thunderbolt now. I miss once, and then I hit, and it does very little damage. And Alakazam's Psychic does so much to me, probably because I'm 10 levels lower than the Alakazam. My next Thunderbolt just doesn't barely knock the Alakazam out. It's paralyzed, I miss, it goes for Reflect again, and then I knock it out. So another lucky victory for Mr. Mime. I dig out of Sabrina's gym, fly back to Pallet Town, and surf to Cinnabar Island. So while I journey through Pokemon Mansion, let's just ask the question, how difficult is Blaine gonna be? Well, the Ninetales could hit us with Flamethrower, which has the potential to do a lot of damage, but I really don't think the Ninetales doing damage is what I should be scared of. Instead, I should be worried about it using Leer or Confuse Ray. After all, if it lowers Mr. Mime's defense, and then I get hit by a takedown from either Rapidash or Arcanine, I think that that'll be the end. So I could see myself having to resort to barrier strategies in this fight, but before trying to set up without any information, I think it makes most sense to just go into the fight and see if I can sweep using Psychic and Thunderbolt. Okay, so let's give Blaine a try. He leads with Ninetales. I go for Psychic, move first, and do about a third. This also lowers Ninetales' special, but when it hits with Flamethrower, it does a decent amount to Mr. Mime and also causes a burn. It moves first with Quick Attack on the next turn, taking me under half. My Psychic doesn't quite get the KO, but it doesn't go for Quick Attack again and I knock it out. However, I don't outspeed the Rapidash that's next, so it hits with a Stomp, and then Burn knocks Mr. Mime out. Okay, so that's my second reset of the playthrough. Okay, so Mr. Mime's getting quite underleveled. Let's use 4 rare candies to take it up to level 45 over 2 more damage rounding thresholds. Then, I'm also going to try to use Barrier here, but this time, after 1 barrier, Ninetales just gets a critical hit with Flamethrower and takes Mr. Mime all the way down to red health. So, that's not good. It confuses me on the next turn with Confuse Ray, I knock it out, but against Rapidash, Mr. Mime hits itself and that's it. Okay, now here's the thing. Ninetales knows Leer, and I know Barrier, so it is possible for Mr. Mime to chain these moves together and potentially boost its stats all the way up to the limit, which is 999. However, in this case, the Ninetales just keeps confusing me, like it's really annoying. Finally, at +5 defense, I make the decision to attack. After all, hopefully this will mean I take less damage against the Rapidash, but then Ninetales hits a big Flamethrower and takes Mr. Mime down to orange health. My Psychic does very little. After all, I'm not getting a badge boost in my special yet, because I need Blaine's badge to receive that. Ninetales goes for Flamethrower again, and it knocks Mr. Mime out. Okay, so there might be another strategy here. What if I use rare candies to take Mr. Mime up to level 47 where it learns Substitute? I replace Body Slam and then I go into the fight. Now here's what you need to understand about Substitute. The substitute that you put in place uses your Pokemon's current stats. So if I set up with Barrier, then my Substitute will be really buffed defensively and likely take multiple turns to knock out. Also, Substitute completely blocks confusion. If I was confused before I set up my Substitute, I would also not be able to deal any damage to myself. But check this out, Ninetales uses Quick Attack and it immediately breaks my Substitute. Okay, I did get a critical hit, but like that's very frustrating. I reestablish the substitute and get set up to +4 defense, and then I knock the Ninetales out. Okay, time to continue my sweep. Hopefully I can take the Rapidash down too. Psychic does half, Rapidash uses Stomp, and my substitute breaks. The Rapidash got a critical hit too. I knock it out with Psychic and move on to the Arcanine. Okay, I'm gonna need luck here. I go for Psychic, it does a third, Arcanine strikes back with Flamethrower, and Mr. Mime goes down. For the next fight, I use one more rare candy so that Mr. Mime is over the next damage rounding threshold at level 48. I set up Substitute right away, and then I go for Barrier. Unfortunately, Ninetales breaks my Substitute, but this time it crits with Quick Attack, and my second Substitute doesn't break. Okay, that's good, so I still have a substitute for the Rapidash. Unfortunately, it goes for Fire Spin, which breaks my substitute, and with this move, because it continues over multiple turns, it continues attacking me, lowering Mr. Mime's health further. I get to the Arcanine, but once again, it finishes me with Flamethrower. So at this point, I was getting a bit frustrated, and I accidentally clicked on Blaine a little bit too fast. So yeah, looks like I'm going to need to do this fight at level 41. I'll just set up Barrier just in case, might as well. I get one off, then the Ninetales confuses me. It's annoying. I get another Barrier in, Ninetales uses Tail Whip, okay, thanks for the badge boost, and then I use Psychic, which does a third, but also lowers Ninetales' special. Okay, that's good. I snap out of Confusion, take the Fiery Fox to red health, it uses Tail Whip, and then I knock it out with Psychic. Okay, Rapidash time. I'll just go for Psychic here after all, I'm gonna lose, right? My first Psychic does less than half, Rapidash strikes with Takedown, which doesn't do too much because of my barriers, and then I get a critical hit knocking it out. Okay, I've made it to the Arcanine, and then my Psychic crits, taking it down under half health. But then Arcanine gets a massive Flamethrower, and it does so much to Mr. Mime, taking it down to 18 hit points. Well, my next Psychic doesn't get a crit, Arcanine survives, but it just uses Reflect. And then my follow-up Psychic does get a crit just for style points, and I finally defeat Blaine, starting at level 41. Okay, so that is definitely another lucky win for Mr. Mime. I'm gonna have to do a lot of thinking about how to optimize that fight. And here I'm lucky because I streamed this run because so many of you suggested strategies for my follow-up playthrough for this fight, so just wait for it, I will get there eventually and show you what I finally came up with. In Giovanni's gym, I only fight the 2 mandatory trainers because the experience from these battles levels Mr. Mime up to level 43. After that, I use rare candies, teaching Mr. Mime's substitute along the way to level 48. Okay, this gives me enough speed to move first against all of Giovanni's Pokemon. Now, let's do it. Because I outspeed, Dugtrio can't hit Mr. Mime with Fissure. As a result, if I go first and use Barrier, it's going to reduce the damage from its Dig and Earthquake. Plus, if it does decide to go underground, I'm just going to get a second Barrier set up for free. Unfortunately, in this case, it doesn't do any of those things. It uses Sand Attack. Okay, so I made a miscalculation there. I really should have gone for Substitute first turn because this would prevent Sand Attack from doing anything. With my Substitute in place, I strike back with Psychic and knock the Dugtrio out in one hit. Persian's next. Usually this thing survives one hit, but today I get lucky with a critical hit and take it down. Nidoqueen's next, Psychic 1 hits because it's super effective, and I also take the Nidoking out in a single hit. Okay, time for the Rhydon. Unfortunately, Sand Attack gets its revenge here because Psychic misses, but then Rhydon just uses Horn Drill. That's not going to work because this thing is so slow. And then Psychic misses again, but Giovanni just uses a Guard Spec. Well played. My next Psychic hits, taking Rhydon to orange health. It breaks my substitute with Earthquake, I set it back up, Rhydon goes for Fury Attack, doing very little, and then I knock it out with Psychic. Now just before I make it to the league, I have to face the rival on Route 22. First is Sandslash, I go for Psychic, it doesn't quite KO, and then Sandslash strikes back with Slash, doing half to Mr. Mime. Okay, not a good way to start this fight, especially with Execute next, because I'm not going to be able to one-hit this thing. Luckily today it just goes for Leech Seed, which does nothing the first turn it's used, and then I knock it out. Cloyster goes down to a single Thunderbolt, I don't get paralyzed on the Magneton, knocking it out with 2 Psychics, and then Kadabra comes out. Okay, so I don't have Body Slam anymore, I'm going to have to take it out with Thunderbolt. I get a crit turn 1, Kadabra uses Reflect, and then I knock it out with a follow-up Thunderbolt. Okay, so I've made it to his ace Flareon. I go for Psychic, get a critical hit, it also lowers Flareon's special, and then the thing uses Leer. Well done, Butt. This was not a good showing from you. So, I've made it to the league. Because I have Thunderbolt, a good special stat, and more speed than all of Lorelei's Pokemon, let's just see if I can sweep. I knock Dugong out over 2 turns, getting hit with Takedown along the way, and then Thunderbolt knocks Cloyster out in a single hit. Next is Slowbro. I knock it out over 2 turns. Luckily it doesn't attack me, and then I move on to the Jinx. Thunderbolt does a third. I get hit with Double Slap. I take the Jinx to orange health. It hits me with Lovely Kiss. Luckily Mr. Mime wakes up right away. Jinx starts Thrash, taking me to orange, and then I knock it out. So this isn't looking good because the Lapras is probably just going to finish me with Hydro Pump or Blizzard. But my first Thunderbolt clearly realizes how dire the situation is, and it paralyzes Lapras, and as a result, Lapras can't move not once but twice, giving Mr. Mime the win. Okay, so this thing is just like filled with luck, like it's tiny, like, I don't know, like jester shoes or whatever they are. They're like leprechaun shoes today, because this thing has got through so many fights on luck alone. You know what Mr. Mime doesn't need luck for though? The next battle. Yeah, like, Psychic is good. That's all I have to say. And you know who's next? It's Agatha. And she's basically a poison type trainer. So, you know what's also good here? Yeah, Psychic. It's really good. Also, this is one time that I don't actually have to mimic substitute. I just have it. It's so nice. Great against her, prevents all confusion, really reduces the amount of randomness that she can inflict upon you, and because of that, Mr. Mime takes a first attempt victory over her. Next is Lance, and this one is a bit tricky, because I would really like Mimic, but I don't want to unlearn any of my moves. They're all very good. Thunderbolt allows me to one-hit the Gyarados. I use Psychic on the first Dragonair. It doesn't knock it out, and it hits me with Hyper Beam. That was not nice. I have only half health left. I knock it out with my next Psychic and move on to the second Dragonair. Okay, so I really need a way to take more damage in this fight. Let's try to set up Substitute. Luckily, this Dragonair knows Wrap, so it does very little damage to me, and it gives me time to set up Barrier. At +4, my Substitute finally breaks, and then I had to do a little bit of mental math. Can I set up another Substitute? By the way, if you have exactly 25% health in Generation 1 and you use Substitute, it will just knock you out. Check out my coughing video if you want to see that happen. Luckily today, Mr. Mime survives on 5 hit points, but Dragonair just goes for Hyper Beam and breaks my Substitute right away. Alright, that's unfortunate. However, setting up those barriers did boost my special stat, and that allows Psychic to one-hit the Dragonair. Aerodactyl's next. I use Thunderbolt, it's super effective, and it knocks it out. All that's left is Dragonite. But unfortunately, Psychic doesn't even do half, and I get hit with Blizzard, so that's it. Okay, let's try again. This time, the first Dragonair doesn't hit me with a huge Hyper Beam, so I knock it out. And then against the second Dragonair, I do the same strategy, this time just starting from higher health. Set up Substitute, and then spam Barrier, increasing my stats and my defense. I accidentally used Thunderbolt against it, which is really bad because then it breaks my Substitute, and I don't have enough health to set up another one. As a result, I just have to go for the sweep. I knock the Dragonair out with Psychic, I knock the Aerodactyl out with Thunderbolt, and I arrive at the Dragonite. This time, because I set up Barrier 3 times, Psychic does half, Dragonite hits with Thunder, but Mr. Mime survives on 11 hit points and finishes the battle. Okay, so I've made it to the champion, and you'll actually see here that I check my inventory and notice that I have 4 rare candies left over, but then I just exit my inventory, save the game, and attempt the champion. So, why am I doing this? Well, I just wanted to see if Mr. Mime could do it. Like, maybe I can just get through the end of the game at level 56 in under 55 minutes of time. That would be an exceptional first playthrough result. Sandslash is first. I go for Psychic, hoping for the KO, and in this case I get a critical hit, knocking it out. Okay, next is Alakazam. I go for Psychic here because it can lower this thing's special, and if I do that, then Thunderbolt will do even more damage. Unfortunately, Alakazam clearly is thinking the same thing, because it lowers my special. It's kind of a messy fight here, and I knock it out after 3 more turns. Luckily, I did not get hit by a Kinesis along the way. Next is Executor. Because I figured it's weak, I set up Substitute once, and then I try to set up Barrier. Unfortunately, Substitute doesn't block Leech Seed, so it sets this up and starts draining Mr. Mime's health. It breaks my Substitute, and when I strike back with Psychic, I'm clearly not doing enough damage, so this fight's over. For the next battle, I feed Mr. Mime all the rare candies. Psychic doesn't one-hit the Sandslash, then it actually Gen 1 misses on a Slash, which is again really lucky for Mr. Mime. I knock it out taking no damage and move on to the Alakazam. This time I opt for more damage and go for Thunderbolt right away, and that allows me to knock it out over 3 turns. Executor's next. I go for Substitute, it hits with Barrage, it doesn't break my Substitute, and then I strike back with Thunderbolt, which luckily paralyzes. Like, honestly, I don't really have a good option here. I go for Psychic next, it actually luckily crits, and then it lowers Special on the next turn. Executor breaks my Substitute, and then the champion uses a full restore. That's really not what I needed to see. Executor uses Stomp, and that takes Mr. Mime out. Okay, so I need to teach Mr. Mime Rest in the place of Substitute. By doing this when I arrive at the Executor, I can heal if I need to. In this case though, I just go for Psychic a lot and knock it out. Okay. Magneton's next. Psychic does half, and then Leech Seed heals Magneton a little bit. It gets a Thunderbolt, which takes Mr. Mime down to 16 hit points. And at this point, I figured that I had just lost, so I went for Psychic again, hoping that like maybe I crit or something like that. It doesn't, but instead Magneton just uses Screech. I knock it out on the next turn, proceed to the Cloister, use Thunderbolt, and that gets the one hit. So I made it to the Flareon. Since I'm moving faster, I can now use Rest to heal, giving Mr. Mime the time it needs to strike back and knock the Fiery Doggo out. So Mr. Mime clocks in with a time of 57 minutes and 10 seconds with 9 resets at level 61. This took 3 hours and 10 minutes of game time. I tried to fight Mewtwo next, and it's really not going very well. It became apparent that it was going to get really hard to win this fight with Psychic and Thunderbolt. Also, Mewtwo lowers my special, and as a result, it knocks me out when I'm trying to heal with Rest. But there's an easier solution here. If I teach Mr. Mime Toxic in the place of Barrier, then I can poison the Mewtwo and hopefully knock it out. Well, not in this case, because Mewtwo finishes me off just before I take it out. But in the next fight, I'm able to stall long enough, and Mr. Mime takes the victory. So now let's optimize a Mr. Mime playthrough. After all, if you've checked out my live video already, you will have known everything that happened up until this point. But I think we all think that Mr. Mime is fantastic, so is a time that is sub 50 minutes possible? Well, let's find out. While I'm getting started, let me just mention that I really like this process. That is, the process where I stream the first playthrough and then make a video on it and the second playthrough. The reason is, I can take the feedback that you leave in the comments on the first live video and incorporate them into my second playthrough. And a lot of you had many things to say, especially about Mr. Mime's Blaine fight. So I'll talk about that when we get there. For now, I decided that I needed to be a higher level to face Brock. After all, going into that fight on minimum battles I don't think makes very much sense. I did forget to heal in this fight, by the way, but I knocked the Geodude out and then Onix just fails a Screech and I take the victory anyways. If I had healed, this fight would have been extremely easy and consistent. Now in Mount Moon, I'm going to fight an optional trainer, which is this Lass with an Oddish and a Bellsprout. They're both poison types, so Mr. Mime can knock them out quickly with Confusion, and this gives it a little bit more experience. This plans out my experience perfectly so that when I knock out Jesse and James Coughing, which is the last Pokemon on their team, Mr. Mime levels up to 16. This is important because then once I pick up the rare candy in Cerulean City, I have 2 rare candies waiting in my inventory, and I can use both of them to get Mr. Mime to level 18 before the rival fight on Nugget Bridge. This is over a damage rounding threshold, and while I have to knock out the Spearow in 2 hits, it does give me the chance to one-hit the Sandshrew. Unfortunately, today I don't get it, and the little thing uses Sand Attack on me. But still I'm 2 levels higher, so I can just one-shot the Rattata, and the Eevee isn't much of a threat. Once again, at the end of Route 25, I fight the Hiker and Junior Trainer so that I can get access to Seismic Toss. This actually gives Mr. Mime just enough PP to defeat the final Lass on this route, and that way I don't have to backtrack to Cerulean City to heal. Also, in Misty's gym, defeating the Junior Trainer just before her levels Mr. Mime up to 23 over the next damage rounding threshold. And here it learns Light Screen, which I am going to be keeping on my moveset for later on. Against Misty, it makes more sense to go for Confusion against the Staryu. After all, it's a mono water type, and if I get a critical hit, I'll knock it out in 1 turn. But then because the Starmie is part Psychic type, it makes more sense to use Seismic Toss, and at my current level, this is a guaranteed 3 hit. Now on the SSN, I make one change. I am still going to pick up Rest because I think it's important for Mr. Mime, but I'm going to skip Body Slam because Seismic Toss is just going to be the better move to use. That means I save 1 fight worth of time, as well as the time spent menuing to teach Mr. Mime Body Slam. Obviously the rival's easy. I arrive at Lieutenant Surge after that. And I figured here, since this time around, Mr. Mime is now speed tied with the Raichu, and the fact that he has X speeds, it just makes sense to go for Seismic Toss right away. As a result, I knock Raichu out in 3 turns, and with that, I'm proceeding to Celadon City. Now here in the tunnel I make a tough call, which I probably wasn't capable of doing on my first playthrough. And that's to have Mr. Mime take Barrier and Light Screen on its moveset. This means I have to keep Confusion and Seismic Toss, so I can't learn Thunderbolt. As a result, the Slowpoke are a bit slower to knock out, but Seismic Toss isn't that much slower because it knocks them out in 3 turns. Next in Celadon City, I pick up the PP up, but I skip the Hideout entirely. After all, Mr. Mime is a powerful Psychic type, and Psychic types are broken in Generation 1. In the department store, after selling all my excess items, I have enough money to buy 3 vitamins, and today I choose 3 Carbos. I grab Psychic in Saffron City, and then I sweep through Pokemon Tower quickly. And with the Pokeflute, I can gain access to Cycling Road, and here I am going to do some training. After all, there are mostly poison and fighting types on this route. Like, yeah, there's a guy with Voltorbs, but we'll just forget about him. As a result, I can gain a lot of experience here quite quickly for Mr. Mime at the perfect point in the game. After all, you want to avoid grinding earlier on in the game and then grind later on when the levels are higher. Erica's gym is next, and in here I also grind against all the trainers because Psychic is super effective against these poison types. There are actually only 2 grass types in Generation 1 that aren't paired with the poison type, the Execute line and Tangela. After taking a quick victory over Erica, Mr. Mime is partway through level 37. As a result, after I defeat the mandatory trainer in Sylph, Mr. Mime is now level 38. Next, I can head to the Warden's house, pick up the rare candy here, and then go into Koga's gym. I save a bit of time here by using Seismic Toss rather than Body Slam to knock out all the Psychic types, and then as I defeat the last Juggler's last Pokemon, Mr. Mime levels up to 39. I say no to Meditate, and now I'm ready for some rare candies. And it's a kind of weird number at this point. I feed Mr. Mime 2, taking it to level 41. Yes, this is only over 1 damage rounding threshold, but I want to save my other rare candies for later in the playthrough. After all, level 40 is all Mr. Mime needs to get guaranteed 1 hits on the 3 Venonats and a 2 hit on the Venomoth. Now remember that Blaine is one of the hardest spots in the playthrough for Mr. Mime. As a result, I want as many levels as possible going into that fight against him. So I had to make a bit of a compromise here with my routing, and I decided to face the rival in Sylph next. This is a compromise simply because Mr. Mime doesn't have Thunderbolt, so it has to rely on Psychic, which 2-shots his first 3 Pokemon. After that, I have to 2-shot the Kadabra with Seismic Toss, and then 2-shot the Flareon with Psychic as well. That fight could have gone wrong for me, but I'm lucky that it didn't today, so still, no resets in this playthrough. Because I defeated him, I actually get a lot more experience because I'm able to defeat Jesse and James and Giovanni. After that, I pick up Mimic, and then I head to Cinnabar Island. In here, I ensure that I pick up the Calcium, and then I grab the Carbos on the final floor, and after that, I'm ready to make my way to Blaine's gym. So for this fight, I got a lot of viewer suggestions, and one of them was, wouldn't Light Screen be useful to avoid massive damage from his powerful Fire-type moves? Obviously, I want to have Barrier to negate his physical moves as well, and so this is the time when we're going to say goodbye to Seismic Toss in favor of having Substitute. I use 1 more rare candy, leveling Mr. Mime up to level 48, and now I'm ready for the fight. First turn, Ninetales hits me with Quick Attack, and then I set up Substitute. Then I go for 1 Barrier, which badge boosts all my stats, and after that I set up Light Screen. Now to really ensure that I have the staying power I need in this fight, I finish my setup with Barrier, giving myself +6, and then I start my sweep. I knock the Ninetales out in 2 turns, the Rapidash can't even break my Substitute with Takedown now, and I knock it out over 2 turns, and last is Arcanine. Psychic is going to be a 3-hit here, but it does have the chance to lower this thing's special. Plus I have Light Screen in place, so even when it breaks my Substitute, I just keep attacking, and with that, I've defeated Blaine, and still Mr. Mime has no resets. Of course, I have to defeat Sabrina next, and this routing works out really well, because it gives Mr. Mime 139 speed for when I face her. Unfortunately though, this fight is a bit of a mixed bag. Setting up Substitute allows me to set up for free against Abra because it can't hit me with Flash when I'm behind it. As a result, I get in Light Screen and 3 Barriers, which badge boosts all my stats, even my special. As a result, I can 2-shot the Abra with Psychic, and then I made a bit of a misplay here, like I should have rooted in a rare candy so that I didn't level up before the Kadabra. As a result, my Psychic's power is cut a bit, and I have to knock it out over 3 turns. Now, Alakazam could make everything fall apart here, because if it just keeps going for Recover, I'm never going to knock it out. However, Psychic does have the chance to lower Special, and as a result, over time I'm dealing more and more damage. This leads Mr. Mime to a victory against Sabrina on its first attempt. Fighting the 2 mandatory trainers in Giovanni's gym levels Mr. Mime up to level 50 over another damage rounding threshold, and with that, I'm ready to face him. In this case, on the first turn I want to use Barrier just once for survivability. After that, Psychic has enough damage to one-shot the Dugtrio. On the Persian, I get a lucky critical hit knocking it out, and then Psychic has guaranteed ranges against both of the Nidos. The thing is, I set up that 1 Barrier very specifically because I can't one-shot the Rhydon. However, with 1 Barrier, it doesn't have a chance to one-hit me, and so I knock it out on the second turn. So this fight against the rival before the league was kinda messy, like it did not go as well as I wanted it to. I got seeded on the Execute when I really should have just set up against the first Sandslash.
and as a result, Mr. Mime gets taken within an inch of fainting before I finally win. So at this point we've arrived at Lorelei, and now Substitute has outlived its usefulness. In its place, I can teach Mr. Mime Thunderbolt. Turn 1, I set up Light Screen because most of her Pokemon are special attackers. As a result, Aurora Beam does very little to me. And then I wanted to damage Dugong, but I did this to itself with Takedown, so I can set up Barrier, and this badge boosts Mr. Mime. I knock the Dugong out, I one-shot the Cloyster, and then Mr. Mime levels up to 53. However, here's the thing. I have such good damage ranges with Thunderbolt, and my special stat is high enough that none of Lorelei's Pokemon represent a serious threat. The only way I could lose here is if she froze me with either Ice Punch or Blizzard. It doesn't happen today, and with that, I'm moving on to Agatha. Starting the fight at level 54, Mr. Mime has enough speed to move first against all of her Pokemon. Unfortunately, the Gengars aren't guaranteed one-hits, however the Golbat, Haunter, and Arbok are. So really the only way I can lose this fight is if the final Gengar uses Hypnosis on me, and then somehow knocks Mr. Mime out with Dream Eater and Psychic. Doesn't seem likely. So with that, I'm off to face Lance. For the rest of the league, I won't need Light Screen, so I teach Mimic in its place. Thunderbolt one-shots the Gyarados. There's a small amount of inconsistency on the first Dragonair because it could use Thunder Wave and cut my speed, but that doesn't happen today and I knock it out. After that I Mimic Ice Beam, and then I sweep through Lance's 3 remaining Pokemon, although the Aerodactyl was a little bit scary today. For the final fight, I revert to my previous moveset of Psychic, Barrier, Rest, and Thunderbolt. Because I have a healing move, I can just set up against the Sand Slash. After that I knock the Alakazam out with 3 Thunderbolts, and then I heal on the Exeggutor with Rest. That's the hardest part of the fight out of the way, so Mr. Mime is set to clock in. It gets a time of 45 minutes and 49 seconds, with 0 resets at level 59. This took 3 hours and 2 minutes of game time. Okay, so let's compare these results. I was able to finish the game 11 minutes and 21 seconds faster. I eliminated all of the previous resets, giving Mr. Mime a perfect playthrough, and I was also able to shave off a few levels and some game time from these results. Overall, I'm really happy with these results. But what placement do they earn Mr. Mime in my tier list? Well, this thing wasn't as fast as Gengar, Nidoking, or Nidoqueen, but it was faster than Ninetales. So today it earns the 4th spot overall. Like, subscribe, ring the Chimecho, and comment because I gotta read them all. If you support me on Patreon or through YouTube memberships, thank you so much, it means the world to me. If you've made it this far, you're incredible. I'll see you in my next video.